I stumbled across a forgotten journal in an old library, its pages yellowed and brittle. A name caught my eye: Charles Babbage. In 1839, he scribbled equations that seemed impossible for his time. They weren't just numbers, they were a blueprint for something deadly, something that wouldn't exist for over a century. How could a man from the age of steam engines describe a weapon of the future? I had to know more. The truth I uncovered changed everything I thought I knew about history, science, and the power of the human mind. Stay with me. This story will blow your mind. I was in a dusty archive, searching for clues about early computing, when I found it, a leather-bound notebook, barely holding together. Charles Babbage's name was etched on the cover, dated 1839. I opened it, expecting sketches of his analytical engine, but instead, I saw equations, complex, precise, and strangely modern. They didn't fit the era. Lines of numbers and symbols danced across the page, describing something mechanical yet futuristic. I felt a chill. These weren't random musings. They were deliberate, almost prophetic. Babbage, the father of computing, was hiding something. I spent hours transcribing, my hands trembling. Each equation felt like a puzzle piece to a secret he never meant to share. By midnight, I realized this wasn't about computers. It was about a weapon no one in 1839 could have imagined. The equations weren't just math, they told a story. Babbage described a device powered by energy principles unknown in his time. I cross-referenced his notes with modern physics texts. The formulas aligned with quantum mechanics, a field unborn in 1839. How could he know? I dug into his life. Babbage was brilliant but frustrated. His machines too advanced for Victorian England. Did he stumble onto something bigger? The notebook mentioned a cascade effect, a term eerily similar to nuclear chain reactions. My heart raced as I read. This wasn't just a theory, it was a design. I pictured Babbage, alone in his study, scribbling furiously, haunted by visions of a future he couldn't explain. Was he a genius or something more? I couldn't sleep that night. The equations haunted me, their precision unnatural. I started researching 19th century science, looking for any clue. Babbage corresponded with Ada Lovelace, the world's first programmer. Did she know? Her letters hinted at ideas too vast for our age, but nothing concrete. The notebook mentioned a focal point of energy, a concept tied to particle acceleration. In 1839, no one understood atoms, let alone how to weaponize them. I felt like I was chasing a ghost. Babbage's work was dismissed in his lifetime, but this was different. This was dangerous. I needed to know if he shared this with anyone. The answer lay in his cryptic final entries. The notebook's last pages were coded, written in a cipher I couldn't crack. Babbage was paranoid, and for good reason. If these equations described a weapon, they could have changed history. I consulted a cryptographer friend, who gasped at the complexity. "This is military grade," she said. We worked late, decoding fragments. Words like containment and release emerged, chillingly familiar. They mirrored designs for 20th century nuclear warheads. I felt sick. How could a man from 1839 know this? Was he guessing, or was something guiding him? The cipher hinted at a meeting with a mysterious figure, someone Babbage called the seer. Who was this person? I tracked down references to this seer in Babbage's other writings. Sparse mentions described a shadowy scholar who spoke of future machines. I found no name, only vague clues pointing to Cambridge. My research led me to a 19th century secret society, the Order of the Saffron Veil, obsessed with science and prophecy. Could Babbage have been involved? The equation suggested a mind beyond his time, as if someone, or something, fed him knowledge. I imagined him at a clandestine meeting, candlelight flickering, as the seer whispered truths from another era. The notebook's final equation was incomplete, as if Babbage stopped, afraid of what he discovered. Days later, I found a letter in another archive, written by Babbage to an unknown recipient. It was cryptic but mentioned a device to end all wars. My stomach churned. The equations weren't theoretical, they were practical. I compared them to declassified nuclear research from the 1940s. The similarities were undeniable: energy yields, containment structures, even radiation shielding. Babbage's work predated these by a century. I felt like I was unraveling a conspiracy. Was he trying to warn the future or build the device himself? His notes suggested fear, not ambition. He wrote of catastrophe, if misused. I started questioning time itself. Could Babbage have accessed knowledge from the future? Some physicists theorize time isn't linear. Information could, in rare cases, bleed backward. Was Babbage a conduit? His analytical engine was a marvel, but these equations were something else. They described a weapon capable of leveling cities. I found a sketch in the notebook, a cylindrical device with intricate wiring. It looked like a prototype, unfinished but precise. I couldn't shake the image of Babbage, alone, wrestling with a truth too big for his era. Did he destroy his work to protect the world? The more I dug, the stranger it got. Babbage's later years were marked by isolation. He abandoned his machines, grew reclusive. Did the equations drive him to it? I found a diary entry from 1845. I have seen the fire of the future, and it burns too bright. It was poetic but terrifying. The fire matched descriptions of nuclear explosions. I contacted a historian who specialized in Babbage. She dismissed my findings as fanciful, but her voice wavered. She knew something. When I pressed, she hung up. I was onto something, and it scared people. I couldn't stop. The notebook consumed me. I started seeing patterns everywhere, equations in my dreams, numbers on walls. Babbage's work felt alive, like it wanted to be found. I uncovered a reference to a lost manuscript, supposedly burned in 1850. Did it contain more? I tracked down a descendant of Babbage's colleague, who had a box of papers. Among them was a single page, torn, with equations matching the notebook. It mentioned energy release beyond human control. I felt a weight on my chest. This was real, and it was dangerous. By now, I was obsessed. I cross-referenced every equation with modern weapon designs. The parallels were too close. Babbage's math predicted neutron multiplication, a key to nuclear fission. How? I theorized he stumbled on a universal truth, a mathematical constant that unlocked the atom's power. Or maybe the seer was real, feeding him glimpses of the future. I found no proof of the seer's identity, but the equations were proof enough. They were a warning, a message across time. Babbage knew what he'd found could destroy the world. He chose silence. I wouldn't. I decided to go public. This wasn't just history, it was a revelation. I contacted a journalist, sharing scans of the notebook. She was skeptical but intrigued. We met in a quiet cafe, and I laid out the equations. Her eyes widened as she recognized terms from modern physics. "This could rewrite history," she whispered. We agreed to publish, but I felt uneasy. What if this knowledge was too dangerous? Babbage hid it for a reason. I spent nights rereading his notes, searching for his intent. He wrote of safeguarding humanity. Was I betraying him? The journalist's article went viral. Headline screamed, "Babbage's secret weapon." The internet exploded with theories, time travel, aliens, conspiracies. I was flooded with emails, some calling me a genius, others a fraud. A physicist from MIT reached out, wanting to verify the equations. We met, and he confirmed they were legitimate. "This shouldn't exist," he said, pale. He found a hidden pattern in the math, a failsafe to prevent the weapon's activation. Babbage wasn't designing destruction. He was trying to stop it. I felt a surge of respect for him, but not everyone saw it that way. I started getting threats. Anonymous messages warned me to stop digging. My apartment was broken into, papers scattered, but nothing stolen. Someone was watching. I remembered Babbage's paranoia and wondered if the same forces were at play. The Order of the Saffron Veil kept resurfacing in my research. Were their descendants still active? I found no proof, but the threats felt too real. I installed new locks, stopped sleeping. The equations were a curse, just as they'd been for Babbage. I went back to the notebook, desperate for answers. One equation stood out, describing a stabilizing field. It was a countermeasure, a way to neutralize the weapon's power. Babbage wasn't just a visionary, he was a protector. I shared this with a physicist, who ran simulations. The field could theoretically contain a nuclear reaction. We were stunned. Babbage had solved a problem modern scientists still struggled with. I felt a connection to him, across centuries. He'd carried this burden alone, and now it was mine. I had to finish what he started. The threats escalated. A car followed me home one night, its lights too close. I stopped sharing my location, went off social media. The journalist urged me to keep going, but I saw fear in her eyes too. We published a second article, detailing the stabilizing field. It sparked debate among scientists. Some called it genius, others impossible. I didn't care about the fame. I wanted the truth out there, to honor Babbage's sacrifice. His equations weren't just a weapon, they were a shield. But who was trying to silence me? I dug deeper into the Order of the Saffron Veil. Old records described them as a mix of scientists and mystics, obsessed with controlling knowledge. They believed some truths were too dangerous for humanity. Was Babbage one of them, or their enemy? A faded letter hinted he broke ties with them in 1840, calling their mission madness. The equations might have been his rebellion, a way to preserve the truth. I felt a chill imagining him defying a secret society, knowing the cost. The physicist called with news. The stabilizing field was viable. He'd run more tests, and it could revolutionize nuclear safety. Babbage's work wasn't just a historical curiosity. It could save lives today. I felt a surge of purpose. But the threats didn't stop. A cryptic email mentioned consequences if I didn't destroy the notebook. I refused. Babbage hid his work to protect it, not to erase it. I started carrying the notebook everywhere, afraid to let it out of my sight. It was my link to him, to the truth. I began to question my own sanity. Was I seeing connections that weren't there? The equations were real, but the seer, the order, it all felt like a fever dream. Yet the threats were tangible, the math undeniable. I found a note in Babbage's handwriting. Truth is a flame. It burns those who carry it. He knew the risk. I wondered if he'd face the same shadows I did. The physicist suggested we go to the authorities. But what could I say? That a 19th century mathematician predicted nuclear weapons? They'd laugh me out. I decided to visit Cambridge, where Babbage worked. The university's archives held more of his papers. I found a sketch of the cylindrical device, annotated with warnings. Never to be built. My heart sank. He'd seen the danger clearly. The sketch included a symbol, a saffron-colored seal. The order again. They'd been watching him, just as someone was watching me. I photographed everything, sent copies to the journalist. If anything happened to me, the truth would survive. I wasn't giving up. Back home, I hit a breakthrough. The cipher's final piece unlocked a name. Elias Varnholt. The seer. I searched historical records and found him. A reclusive mathematician who vanished in 1840. No paintings, no clear descriptions, just rumors of his brilliance. Did he guide Babbage to these equations? I imagined them together, Varnholt whispering secrets of a future he'd seen. The notebook's last line was a plea. Forgive me, Elias. Babbage felt guilt. Had he betrayed his mentor? Or was he protecting the world from him? I published everything, equations, sketches, the seer's name. The world needed to know. The response was chaos. Scientists debated, historians scoffed, conspiracy theorists went wild. I didn't care. Babbage's work was out there, no longer hidden. The physicist team began developing the stabilizing field, crediting Babbage. I felt a weight lift. But the threats didn't stop. A voice on the phone warned. You've gone too far. I hung up, heart pounding. The order, or whoever they were, was still out there. I kept the notebook close, my only proof. I started researching Elias Varnholt deeper. Fragments of his life emerged, a prodigy, shunned for radical ideas. One account called him a man out of time. Did he have visions, or was he something else? I found a letter he wrote to Babbage. The equations are a gift and a curse. It confirmed they'd collaborated. Varnholt's disappearance coincided with Babbage's silence on the project. Did the order silence him? I pictured Babbage, torn between loyalty and fear, hiding the truth to protect it. The physicist team made progress. The stabilizing field worked in simulations, potentially preventing nuclear disasters. Babbage's legacy was alive, saving lives 180 years later. I felt proud but haunted. The notebook's equations were complete, but the story wasn't. Who was Varnholt, really? I found a reference to a time fracture in his writings, a term no 19th century scholar would use. Was he a time traveler? The idea was absurd, but the equations weren't. I needed more answers, but the trail was cold. The threats grew bolder. My car's tires were slashed. I stopped going out at night. The journalist suggested I disappear, but I couldn't. Babbage didn't run, and neither would I. I started blogging, sharing every detail. If I was in danger, the world would know why. The blog went viral, and support poured in. People sent me tips, old documents, even wild theories. One mentioned a hidden vault in Cambridge, tied to the Order. Could it hold more of Babbage's work? I booked a flight. In Cambridge, I found the vault, an unmarked room in an old library. Inside were papers, but not Babbage's. They were Varnholt's, filled with equations even more advanced. My hands shook as I read. They described energy manipulation beyond nuclear fission, fusion, maybe more. Varnholt wasn't just a guide. He was the source. I photographed everything, sent it to the physicist. He called me, stunned. This could change everything. But the vault wasn't empty when I left. Footsteps followed me in the dark. I barely made it back home. The footsteps haunted me, a reminder I wasn't safe. I hid the notebook in a safe deposit box, keeping digital copies. The physicist's team published a paper, citing Babbage and Varnholt. The stabilizing field was real, now in development. I felt a flicker of hope. Babbage's equations were saving the future, just as he'd intended. But Varnholt's role gnawed at me. Was he a prophet, a traveler, or something else? His papers hinted at knowledge no human should have. The threats stopped abruptly. Too quiet. I didn't trust it. The Order, if they existed, hadn't given up. I kept digging, finding references to Varnholt in obscure texts. He'd been called a heretic, a visionary, a danger. One text claimed he saw beyond the veil of time. I laughed it off, but the equations didn't lie. They were real, and they worked. I started to wonder if the Order's mission was to suppress this knowledge, not destroy it. Were they still out there, watching? The physicist invited me to a conference to present our findings. I hesitated but went. The room was packed, scientists hanging on every word. I told Babbage's story, Varnholt's mystery, the equation's power. The crowd was silent, then erupted in applause. For the first time, I felt I'd done right by Babbage. His work was no longer a secret. The stabilizing field was moving to real-world tests. But as I left the stage, a man in a dark coat stared at me. His eyes felt ancient, knowing. Was he one of them? Back home, I kept the blog alive, sharing updates. The stabilizing field was a success, credited to Babbage's genius. Varnholt remained a shadow, his story unfinished. I stopped looking over my shoulder, but the fear lingered. The notebook was safe, its secrets no longer mine alone. I'd honored Babbage's legacy, but Varnholt's equations hinted at more, technologies we weren't ready for. I decided to stop chasing. Some truths were too big, even for me. I'd done my part. I sit now, writing this, the notebook's weight still on my mind. Babbage whispered equations in 1839, and they changed the world. Varnholt's role remains a mystery, but his gift, or curse, lives on. The stabilizing field is saving lives, but the weapon's shadow looms. I wonder if Babbage knew I'd find his work, if he meant for this to happen. The truth is out there now, for better or worse. If you're as fascinated by this as I am, join me. Subscribe to my channel, and let's uncover history's secrets together. The past isn't done with us yet. If this story of hidden equations and a future weapon gripped you, don't miss what's next. Subscribe to my channel for more untold stories from history's shadows. Hit that button, join the journey, and let's uncover the truths that time tried to bury.